Mystery characters are intriguing since, well, they're a mystery. Like playing a game online with random people, all you really know are their avatars before they disappear. Same with random people you walk past on the street somewhere, they're like that too. Sometimes a mystery character either stays a mystery, or we slowly learn more about them. However, there could be a bunch of key parts missing that we just don't get to see. That brings me to a certain Like a Dragon character, where it seems like the most we know about this guy is that he enjoys cold noodles, a post-humorous detail we learned from Kiryu in Yakuza 3. Even then, I feel like that's the biggest thing we know, as a joke and as an actual detail about him. Or is there more we can find by looking in past games? You guys know him, Osamu Kashiwagi. A man who was practically Kiryu's uncle and one of his last living connections to the past. There will be full spoilers ahead for several games in the series. Now, I've talked about and given the spotlight to many Like a Dragon characters in the past, such as Shigeru Nakahara, Ryu Aoki, Daigo Dojima and Haruka, and even redeemed antagonists, just to name a few. And I'm like the only American Yakuza YouTuber working in the shadows to bring these spotlights to you guys, the Yakuzers worldwide. You know, I'm like in that weird shopping mall of Kamurocho that nobody knows what's in there, but maybe I do. The scar-faced man Kashiwagi is one of those guys you don't forget. On the surface, he seems like another big Yakuza leader who lives comfortably as a sort of middleman in the Tojo clan, never quite being at the very top, but never just being a grunt. He's certainly got his own unique status, even being one of the few to have an office or two at the Millennium Tower, but we know how that ends up. I like that Kashiwagi, despite having a badass scar on his face, was never an antagonist for Kiryu during his prime days as a Dragon Dojima. Whenever the Tojo clan was throwing everything at Kiryu, Kashiwagi was still on his side. This is the same guy who showed up with reinforcements to help Kiryu at a harbor twice in the franchise. And while both Kashiwagi and Shintaro Kazuma weren't the best support systems for Nishiki, they still tried to make matters right for the Tojo clan and the stability of civilians when all the pillars started to crumble. This leads me to Kashiwagi's unique side story in Yakuza 3, where during Kiryu's adventures in Kamurocho, he soon learns that Kashiwagi created an organization to help ex-criminals get their lives back together to make an honest living. This organization was the Honest Living Association, the HLA, and is what I believe to be a very cool, quote-unquote, secret storyline for the Yakuza series. I say secret since it gets swept underneath all the standard discussions you see for Yakuza 3, like the combat, main story, or technical stuff. It's a shame, since this Kashiwagi side story is so cool, and it also ties back to Yakuza 1 in a way I never thought I'd see coming. More on that in a little bit. Now sure, Kashiwagi himself doesn't appear because he got the wrong kind of machine gun kiss in the main story, but the fact that we got to see what kind of support system Kashiwagi was developing while still being a Yakuza boss is genuinely badass, and enlightens us on how many sides a person can have. Like, being a top Yakuza boss while also creating a place for criminals to rehabilitate might be as contradicting as liking cold noodles. However, I'd say it's just another way of appreciating the other things in life, those finer things in life. And it's just what makes us more complex. This ties back into the scar in his face. We never learn how he got that scar in the main series, and I think that's for the best. Keeps the mystery of Kashiwagi intact. Although if you want to see how another Kashiwagi got the scar, then check out his counterpart in Ishin, that being Sarazawa Kamo. I also think that his performance in that game has a lot more of a range to it. But back to the main series. The Honest Living Association in Yakuza 3 involves its main member Ibuki reaching out to Kiryu since they need help with their polar opposite faction, the Reapers. It's a cool series of quests since it's a great excuse to enjoy mini-boss battles throughout Kamurocho and even Ryukyu. We all know there's a whole stigma with Yakuza 3's combat, so I'll raise you this. What Yakuza fan will say no to a bunch of boss fights? And I gotta say, whether it's Kamurocho or Ryukyu, I love the variety we get with the boss fights and their movesets and even their little backstories they get, along with their designs. Once you complete the battles against the Reapers, you'll end up battling a certain main man from Yakuza 1. It's a cool secret fight that I was surprised to find in a franchise where the Amon clan is usually the prime suspect for a secret fight. But since Amon's already in this game, this means that instead they brought back a boss fight from the original game story, and it is kick-ass. Especially with his own theme being brought back and remixed. I'll let you experience that fight for yourself if you haven't done it yet. Trust me, it's worth it. To tie back New Kashiwagi, this Honest Living Association and his cold noodles love affair are just enough to add some layers to this guy who was a recurring character in the original Yakuza trilogy. Besides Ishin, he'd get a boss fight after Nishiki's own boss fight in Yakuza 0, where Majima gets to fight him. It makes their brief screen time together in Yakuza 2 and 3 a little bit better since, well, in this universe, fights are a great way to bond. A nice detail is that Kashiwagi's fight takes place in pretty much the same place where you fight Lao Kalong in Yakuza 3. I was surprised at how Kashiwagi can actually pummel you if you're not careful with some unique movesets he has. I also remember Sarah's fight being quite difficult as well in 0. And surprisingly, you can fight both Kashiwagi and Sarah in Kiwami 1's climax battle in the form of prototype IF-8 machine. I'm not sure how that works since this game is before Yakuza 3, but it's a fun Easter egg for a climax battle. Aha, looks to be that time we talk about the big boulder in the room. Yeah, Kashiwagi's return surpassed just being in prequel and historical games. ... You see, the cold noodles brought him back to life in Yakuza 7. A reveal that sent shockwaves throughout fan discussions for good reason. It's not every day that a deceased character just shows up without explanation. Then Yakuza 7 did the same thing for another certain scar-faced man, and then 8 did it with another character we last saw in Yakuza 3. Out of these three guys, I do think that Kashiwagi was still the best option to return, even if we still don't get a proper explanation for his survival besides some vague hints, such as just naming his bar in Yokohama, well, the Survive Bar. I've already done a video on Joji Kazama in the past, where I expressed how I thought that as crazy as it was that Shintaro Kazuma had a younger brother that looked like his exact twin, it was still soap opera enough to let Kiryu himself get closure on his adopted father. It gave a badass way to visually show Kiryu moving past Kazama and truly being a father of his own. That fight also worked since it was several chapters after Kashiwagi's presumed death, where one of the last things we saw Kashiwagi do was see the sketch of Joji. And with the way Infinite Wealth showed it, I bet when Kiryu returned to Kashiwagi's bar after the events of the game, he was able to finally enjoy a fine drink with his old friend and catch up. What I loved about Infinite Wealth is that for most of the old faces we saw, they instead left the door open on purpose for Kiryu to see everyone again. I know it may not have been everyone's cup of tea, but I thought it played into the themes of wanting Kiryu himself to realize that he has to live. Now, I don't mean that by Kiryu seeing everyone again, I don't mean that in the form of another Kiryu game. Instead, just a way for us to know, as the audience, that Kiryu will go back to everyone he loves, to see them, and to just catch up, to make things right. and that includes Kashiwagi. In the eyes of Kashiwagi, I'm sure he kept some tabs on Kiryu following his death. However, much like we saw how Kiryu had to keep his identity hidden for almost a decade, I'm sure Kashiwagi knew he'd better not just show up in Kiryu's life again, out of nowhere. Additionally, for all we know, Kashiwagi had to keep a low profile in case any old enemies of his found out he was alive, and that would jeopardize the life he has at Yokohama. A life that's allowed him to even make a small appearance and lost judgment since he's a staple of that bar district. And to be honest, Akiyama's the kind of guy I really want to get his own guide in, but I wouldn't mind Kashiwagi getting his own spin-off game. Who knows? With all that I've talked about today, I was one who initially thought it was stupid to bring Kashiwagi back from the dead. However, nowadays I think it was a clever decision. Now, that decision won't work for every character unless they make some incredible story that makes me a happy caveman, but in the case of Kashiwagi, it works. Why? Well, that's because he was already a mysterious guy to begin with, much like Shintaro Kazuma. Perhaps Kashiwagi realized his near-death experience was the opportunity to practice what his Honest Living Association preaches, that being the chance to have a better life. And with the way the Tojo clan was going by Yakuza 3, I think Kashiwagi was able to escape at just the right moment. The legendary Yakuzas from Kashiwagi's generation were mostly gone, and the generation after that was the one that belonged to Kiryu and Majima, the same legends that was able to put the Tojo and Omi to rest. If anything, the image of Kashiwagi and Kiryu enjoying a nice drink and being able to catch up might just be what they both need. It's fun to imagine. And for Kiryu especially, being able to reunite and talk to a friend he's known for several decades, and one that's gone through a similar experience to him, might be enough for him to finally find some kind of peace. And the man who erased his name. There's a sub-story that ends with Kiryu wondering if Kazama was proud of him. If there's only one mystery I can solve, it's that after Infinite Wealth, I'm certain Kashiwagi told Kiryu he was proud of him, and that Kazama would be proud too, once they are finally able to catch up. If there's one thing a ghost encounter can do, it's giving proper closure. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think of Kashiwagi in the comments below, and be sure to check out my other video essays if you haven't already. Stay tuned for more, and I'll see you in the next one. Tiger Drop Films out.